All right, so welcome back to Just Two Guys Media. We're talking about some video games here today. It just released today, actually, so this is a perfect time to do this talking about. We're, of course, talking about Final Fantasy 16. Very anticipated. A lot of people really excited for it. We are both Final Fantasy fans in different ways, but probably a lot similar. Maybe different ways from the new generation. But let's talk about a couple things. First of all, I want to talk about we played the demo. We haven't had a chance to play the real game yet. I know the reviews for the game have come out and have been very overwhelmingly positive, which is awesome. I'm glad to see that back. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the demo we played, some things we like about it, some things we don't like about it, and really just the path that Final Fantasy is on as a whole. It's. I mean, we're 16 games in at this point. It came out when I was born, 91, 92.
Well, technically, 87
Oh my
in
goodness.
that's in Japan. They released Final Fantasy 1 in Japan in 87.
So
And then 88 was Final Fantasy 2 in Japan only.
right.
And then Final Fantasy 3 was, I believe, also Japan only, and that was in 1990.
Okay.
And then we get to Final Fantasy 4, and that was on the Super Nintendo system in 1991.
Okay. So yeah. So a long time. Late 80s then. There's been a lot that's changed. The Final Fantasy series has gone through a lot of um, innovations. They've tried some things. It's been really different, and this is where a lot of people really give Final Fantasy criticism because they're like, these games aren't sequels. They're not in continuation of each other. They're completely different from one another, which I think we've all accepted by this point. But what's crazy about it is how different they really are. You can pick up a game, Final Fantasy enter number here, and compare it to Final Fantasy enter number here, and there's really nothing similar about them at all. Especially at this point now, because over the last 10 years, the advancements that have been made. One, of course, being the battle system. It's no longer turn-based. It's very action-oriented. Graphic-wise, it's gone along with the new, mainstream type of PS5 stuff. Story-wise, there's been some of this. Like, we had 10, which was amazing in story. We had 12, which was pretty good in story, I thought. And then we had 13, which was really okay in story. Like, I really didn't care for the characters or how that ended. We'll talk more about that later. But for me, really and now we're back to 15 and 16. It's just been so different. Let's just start with the basic question of Final Fantasy. You knew it from a standpoint of you played from Super Nintendo.
I did. I played from Final Fantasy 4, which was just Final Fantasy when it released in the US, I believe. And I played on it on my living room floor with my brother-in-law, and we played for hours and hours at a time.
Right.
And I can remember that you had to save
Yeah.
regularly because if you don't, your brother-in-law's daughter might run through the living room, Amanda, and kick the power cord out. And then if you had gone for 4 or 5 hours without saving, you lost everything that you didn't save. So
Really, really basic JRPG, Japanese RPG, uh, just type of gaming there. Turn-based battle system, level grinding, which was huge. You basically level grinding. If you're not familiar, you might be too young for that. Level grinding was essentially, before you do everything you're supposed to do, but when you got to the next boss, it was a little tough. You needed to go back and just spend an hour or two leveling up.
there was times when you didn't just follow the storyline. You actually had to go and build the characters up so that they could be tough enough to get through to the next boss.
Right.
Because otherwise, if you just went from point A to point B, like a lot of the games they try to get you to do today, is hey, listen, you go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. When you get to 9, you're done. And if you did that in these, you'd get to 2 and you'd keep getting your ass beat. Well, sorry about that, but you just keep getting killed over and over and over again until you go back to the one area and level up and keep killing the same creatures, and it's kind of boring and it's kind of a grind. That's why we call it grind and levels. But then once you're high enough level to beat that 2, well, then you grind in level 2 until you can beat level 3.
The grind was so great though, because I mean, the thing is yes, it always wasn't the most pleasant part of the experience, but what made RPGs so great, and especially JRPGs, is once you get to the end and you've put in all these hours, you're able to look back on it and go, man, remember when I had to grind? Remember when I had to do this? Remember when I had, and that's what made it more enjoyable. Not saying that other games aren't enjoyable. You can play a 7 hour game and it be enjoyable, but you don't really get to the end and look back and go, remember when I, and you're like, no, I mean, I just kind of blew through it. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it's just, it's not the same thing as those classic RPGs. So with that being said, when we played Final Fantasy 16, there was a lot of stuff that I for sure liked that they improved on. And then there was some stuff that I was kind of like, about. I have a lot of mixed feelings. It was a lot of feelings I had to really process.
So
Tell me where you're at with it.
all right, so I played basically 4, 5, 6, and I currently own 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 2. I did not play 11.
Which was online only, so yeah.
13, I played. 14, I did not play.
What about 12 though? You played 12.
I played 12.
Yeah, 12.
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
And 12 was a rough one for me. I don't know. To me, Final Fantasy has always been kind of a medieval game. Yeah, they had the airships eventually,
Yeah.
but when the driving the cars, and I mean, if I want a driving game, I'll go get Need for Speed or Grand Theft Auto.
Well, 12 was because it didn't have. I mean, it had airships, but it didn't have cars or anything.
Then it was
15 is the one that had cars.
15 was the one that was cars the whole time.
4 bros in the car.
Yeah. Okay, that's the one I didn't get very far on.
Yeah.
12, I got all the way to the end. It was the one with a lot of the mech stuff, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I enjoyed it. I played it and got all the way to the end on it.
For sure.
So it's 15 that I've.
Yeah.
And then, so for those of you who have played 15 and thought it was the greatest game in the world, you may be a little disappointed in 16 if you liked all of the time frame. Yeah, because and the one thing that I immediately cut my eyes on 16 is it's gone back to medieval times. Basically, there may be vehicles, but there's not in the demo, and it's more about
I don't think there is.
the weapons. Going back to the old school of you use your weapons to kill what you need to kill, and there's armies and stuff like that, and they do battles, and I liked the demo very much. I really did. I know that it's a dual joystick, which is everything's going to that. It's going to continue that way.
It's very action oriented, and it has the battle system. They tried to perfect that battle system for years. That's what's caused them to take so many steps back, is them trying to create a battle system that's more for the new era. And I feel like that's what's really kept them back the last couple of games, has been that.
This I liked, and I'm not super big on some of the new battle systems that are out there, but I liked what I've seen of this one so far.
Right. I don't have a problem with 16's battle system. I spent a lot of time with this, really trying to dive into, because here's the problem with Final Fantasy, okay, is you always play you play one of them first. And whatever the first one you play is kind of how your mind sets and says, okay, this is Final Fantasy. And so what happens is they're all so different that it just plays with your brain a little bit, because you're like, well, here's what I'm expecting from Final Fantasy, but they're also different that it just throws you off. And for example, my first one was 10. And 10 is one of my top 3 games of all time. I'll go to the grave defending it. You can make fun of the Titus laugh scene all you want. I don't care. It's just so amazing with how in-depth the story is, how political it is. It's very linear. I don't care. The story's cheesy. I like that. I like the lighthearted story that can be serious at times, but most of the time is very lighthearted, very romance heavy. Love that about it. A great storyline, and people harp on it a lot, but I played 10. 10.2 came out, was super excited, played it. I thought it was a great continuation. I don't expect it to be just as good. It was just a great continuation for people who wanted more. And then 12 came out, and 12 wasn't as story heavy, but 12 was a game that once I got to the end, I looked back on it and said, okay, I'm glad I spent the time. It wasn't like just gripping to where I was at school and I was like, God, I got to get home and play that Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, but 10 and 10-2 were kind of that way.
They were that
10
way.
and 10-2 both were like okay, it's it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I got to be up at work in 6 hours.
Yeah.
I can make it in 5 hours, right?
I understand my opinion's a little jaded here. I've never played 8. I've never played 9. I want to. But I've heard that those games are similar. I've heard people bang on the table and say, I had to stay up. I had to know.
7, 8, 9. I loved all 3 of them.
Yeah.
One of the early ones, you actually have to charge up your magic.
Yeah.
So you have to. The way they do the magic, they kind of change that, and they change the system on how you power up your characters and which tree you follow, which line and they do it differently each time. And I think if they ever find what is just perfect, they might stick with it.
Maybe it's hard,
but
when everything's
everything advances. Yeah. And I
that's,
think most of the changes that they made have been pretty good. It takes a little while to get used to the new system, whatever it is, and I hate that because
you gotta have an open mind.
I would, it's so much easier just to go in and take what you know and go.
Right.
And they won't let you do that. They're going to make you think a little bit
and try to with the regular audience. So when I was playing the demo, it was obvious to you that I was getting frustrated at certain points. I want to talk about those certain points that I got frustrated at. Yeah. The first one is, and this one's small because I can't overlook it. So there's one part of the new demo I can't ignore, and I know you said you love it, which is the medieval aspect of it. I've never been as big of a fan of that. I can ignore it because there are games I've played that have had that, such as The Witcher 3, which was phenomenal, where they're basically talking like, "Hoi, governor, can I have a bottle of water?" And it's like, it drives me nuts. They're talking very old British, very old style. They're trying to earn their father's respect, yada, yada, yada. I get it. It's cool. You like it. I've never been as big of a fan of it.
RPG, that's kind of where the RPGs originated from, really.
And it can be. And
they have space ones now and alien ones and zombie ones out there.
They have old style ones that aren't super British talking. And what I'm talking about, what bothers me specifically, and I'm a big Dragon Quest fan, and so Dragon Quest is more like, it does talk in British tones, and it talks it's the fact of, it's how they act. It's not the accent. It's the I'm trying to earn my father's respect, and my, it's
you don't want your father's respect.
Yeah. Okay. So. Let me get back on track here.
Yeah.
You're messing me up. So, the type of medieval I'm not a super big fan of, but I can overlook it because I've overlooked it before and it can be great. It's just really hard to pinpoint, and I had to think a lot about this, but it's like, what is Final Fantasy? And I had to really think about that. And although that I'm a big fan of 10, and although I'm in love with 10, that was my first game I ever played. It's Final Fantasy is always different from game to game. It's just not always apparent. Final Fantasy used to be the standard when it came to graphics, innovation. Final Fantasy X came out on PS2, and it was like we were watching these CGI rendered cutscenes where we were like, that looks like a real human, and we were blown away because it was like, oh my gosh. With this new one, the graphics are okay. I mean, I've seen way better graphics. I've seen way better motion capture. I've seen way better details in the environment. I would actually argue, it's funny, I just brought up Witcher 3. I would argue that the environment and the details in The Witcher 3 are probably a little better. And that came out 8 years ago.
I haven't played Witcher 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
The graphics look pretty good to me.
Yeah.
The armor is amazing.
There's a resolution problem. There's a resolution problem, and here's the other issue I had. I'm glad you brought that up. if of course the game, like most PS5 games, has where you can choose between performance and graphics.
Right.
We chose performance, which means that the graphics, instead of being 4K, are essentially 2K, with a little bit of motion blur, which is fine. But the problem is, I still had a lot of stuttering. I was playing, a lot of uh, fight scenes, and the graphics would stutter. It would go down to, you could tell, below 30 frames a second. I expect more out of a Final Fantasy game. I just do. They used to be the leaders in innovation, and now they're just, it seems
Do
like
you think maybe that's just the demo?
it could be. It could be. I don't know. It could be. It could be, but that's still a problem. If you're presenting a demo to me as a company saying, "Hey, this is what we're going to advertise to you, what our game's about," and I have issues with the frame rate during the game, well, I'm going to assume that there's issues with the regular game, right? I mean, because that's what you're showing me. So you're right. It could be different. It could not be. So I had issues with that because it just isn't the innovator it used to be. It feels like Final Fantasy's trying to catch up. It feels like they're taking influence from a lot of games.
I guess since I started on Final Fantasy IV,
Yeah.
and I went from that, and then 5, and then 6 and 7,
Well,
and then 8 through 6 was 4 to 6 was not a lot of changes.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
pixelated.
8 was a little bit different. 9 was a little bit different. 7,
that was like the
7, 8, and 9 were a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when 10 came out, it was a mind-blowing difference.
Yeah.
10-2. Then when 12 came out, it was another difference.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of like it. I don't want it to be too real.
Right.
I want to know I'm still playing a game, I guess.
Yeah.
When I'm playing Madden, I want it to be as real as the NFL,
Right.
But for an RPG, where I'm role playing someone else, I mean, if it looks a little bit, that's okay with me. That's
Right.
why I like my game.
Yeah, and Final Fantasy is different. And I think that's part of it too. Final Fantasy used to feel like a traditional RPG, like a JRPG. And then as time has gone on, they have gotten more with the real world, and they've gotten more with the times, which I understand. It's a business. You got to make money, you got to sell copies. Square Enix has a very high budget and they expect a lot. And so I get that. But for me, I was also thinking about, like, me as a gamer. I've ventured and has stayed on that old traditional path. I still play Persona 5, which is turn-based. I still love Dragon Quest, which is turn-based.
I really love turn-based. Sometimes my brain my brain doesn't go as fast as it needs to for the other battle systems. Where it's not turn-based. You sit there, you die.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to think about, okay, what spell do I want to cast, or how do I want to handle this? There's that guy's a really big guy. Who do I got to kill first? Or right. Oh, hey, I need another soda, or need another coffee or drink or something.
Take a moment to catch your breath.
Yeah, and then you come back and your guy's dead, and it's game over, and you lose all your stuff, and maybe they penalize you.
They don't really penalize you at all anymore. Yeah, they don't really penalize you like they used to. But as a guy who ventured from all those, and I still today even play Tales of games, Trails of Cold Steel and Trails of the Sky and Trails from Azure are probably my favorite game series. I mean, I don't know if they're my favorite of all time. They got to be close. I mean, I buy all the stuff and the figures and stuff. I love it. And those are turn based. And so for me, I've always stayed with that old traditional, more cell shaded, cartoony look.
Yeah.
But just lighthearted story, romance, funny. You don't have to take it too seriously. All the characters are really nice to one another because it's just this overblown, like, really good. It's kind of like a Ted Lasso TV show effect. It's just so wholesome. You just enjoy it the whole time you're playing it. You're like laughing and just all these characters love each other. I wish I had friends like that. Whereas now Final Fantasy's gotten, this is the first one that's mature. Throats are being slit, blood's gushing, the F-bomb is being thrown around, which, my opinion is, you're making a game of medieval times. The F-bomb hadn't even been invented yet. You could get into a realism.
I'm sure they said something back then. I'm not sure.
It wasn't the F-bomb. Well, it was invented. I think F-bomb was invented in the late 1600s. So well before, yeah, so well before that. So so yeah, it's a little, and so and that's petty. You can say, well, Nick, that's petty. You're getting into like what words were said. I understand that, but to me, it's like,
Of course, that is an alternate universe too. That's not an
it's not,
actually
yeah, it's
our
not
universe.
real.
So,
Yeah,
they
for
could have
sure.
invented the F bomb,
Right.
2 years before or 200 years before. You don't know.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, and so in reality, it's just tough. There's a lot of that there. Now let me not bomb on it the whole time. Let me talk about some stuff I liked.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, let me talk about the stuff I didn't like. The demo was over before I mean, actually a decent length demo, but it was where they ended the demo. I got to see more. So yeah, thanks a lot, Square Enix. I'm going to have to spend 80, 90, $100, whatever it is to get it now, because I've got to play at least long enough to find out what happens. They leave you kind of at a cliffhanger. So
No, I'll agree with you. I give Square Enix credit there.
beautiful.
The big problem I had with Final Fantasy 13, I didn't play much of 15. I can only imagine, but 13, the big problem I had is I got to the end of the game, and if all the characters had died, I wouldn't have cared. If all of them had literally died at the end and like a brain's blown out, the kid laying there, I'd have been like, that's what they get, eating popcorn, because I just didn't care. The game didn't make me care enough about the characters. Whereas like Final Fantasy X, if Yuna had died at the end, I wouldn't even. I'd be sitting in my room in a straight jacket, I'd be in a straight jacket like this, just constantly.
It would, and the romantic in me was all the way through it saying, kiss her, kiss her, kiss. She wants to be kissed. And she's in her room, they're having cutscenes. Why wish he would kiss me? And then, and then two of the other characters get married. They have a baby. And I mean, it was.
There's a lot of it. Yeah, no, there's a lot of. The character development is so good. The characters are so different. You really care about them all. Whereas 13 just really didn't grip me at all in that way.
I like being able to play multiple different characters in one party that you control all of.
Yeah.
The 4 to 6 players or whatever, and being able to choose which characters you need to take, because there's sometimes when you need to be spell heavy, and there's other times when you need to be brute heavy.
Yeah.
Let's go melee all the way, and
depends on the enemy type.
Yeah, right. And it's nice to be able to switch in and out, and that was really good at that.
Yeah.
Kamari was a massive.
10 was really the sweet spot. It really had a great balance.
Well, in 10-2, I was worried about 10-2 because as soon as I picked it up and started playing it, it had a different advancement system.
Yeah.
And it was a little tough for me to grasp. I couldn't read far enough along into it, I guess, to understand it really well. And so it took me a little while to start finessing through that. Once I got it, it was great.
Yeah.
It was awesome, because you could really send your people whatever direction you wanted. So
yeah, for sure. And going back to 16, ultimately, I think my biggest, I'm happy with the way it's going. I think Square Enix is probably doing the right thing for what they're trying to do. The story was gripping. Just in the demo, I already was like, I got to know what happens next. And for that was already better than 13, because 13, I just never experienced that. I never experienced the what happens next. So to already have that, I'm excited about it. I'm going to play it.
Before we played the demo, I heard 16 was coming out, and I wasn't super excited after playing 15. 15 was okay. It was a decent game. It was okay, but I kind of like the old the grassroots, medieval, the swinging weapons and 4 guys riding around in a car. That's kind of GTA to me. Something it wasn't Final Fantasy, and then we played the demo. And I got excited about Final Fantasy again. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to playing this. I think we should do a review after
it's done. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So let's get together. Let's go get it and let's play it and let's review it as soon as we can get done.
Yeah. Even with all the criticisms I have, I'm excited to play. I'm excited to see the story. I think it's going in the right direction. It just sucks because when you find something you're really used to and you love, and it's different, no one likes change, and so it is what it is. But hey, we're gonna do that. We're gonna find it. We're gonna play it. Have a good time. then we'll review it as well. We'll give a final thought when it's all done. So appreciate you as always. This is Just Two Guys. We're just two guys.
Just two guys.
That's all we are.
Chuck and Nick.
Right, Chuck and Nick. So, yeah, we'll come at you with a review then. But until then, next time, we appreciate it as always, guys. Appreciate you.